glance at selected Philippine caricature in Alfred McCoy's Philippine Cartoons, Political Caricature of the American Era, 1900s to 1941. Political cartoons and caricature are rather recent art form, which veered away from the classical art by exaggerating human features and poking fun at its subject. Such art genre and technique became a part of the print media as a form of social and political commentary, which usually targets persons of power and authority. Cartoons became an effective tool of publicizing opinions through heavy use of symbolism, which is different from a verbose written editorial and opinion pieces. The unique way that a caricature represents opinion and captures the audience's imagination is reason enough for historians to examine these political cartoons. Commentaries in mass media inevitably shape public opinions, and such kind of opinion is worthy of historical examination. In his book, Philippine Cartoons, Political Caricature of the American Era in the 1900s to 1941, Alfred McCoy together with Alfredo Roses compiled political cartoons published in newspapers, dailies, and periodicals in the aforementioned time period. For this part, we are going to look at selected cartoons and explain the context of each one. The first example shown here was published in The Independent on May 20, 1916. The cartoon shows a politician from Tondo named Dr. Santos passing his crown to his brother-in-law, which is Dr. Barcelona. Then a Filipino guy, as depicted wearing salakot and barong Tagalog, was trying to stop Santos, telling the latter to stop giving Barcelona the crown because it is not his to begin with. To further analyze the picture, we see the price that Filipinos paid for the democracy modeled after the Americans. First, it seemed that Filipino politicians at that time did not understand well enough the essence of democracy and the accompanying democratic institutions and processes. This can be seen in the rising dynastic politics in Tondo as depicted in the cartoon published by The Independent. The second cartoon was also published in The Independent on June 16, 1917. This was drawn by Fernando Amorsolo and was aimed as a commentary to the workings of Manila police at that period. Here, we see a Filipino child who stole a skinny chicken because he had nothing to eat. The police officer was relentlessly pursuing the said child. A man wearing a salakot, labeled Juan de la Cruz, was grabbing the officer, telling him to leave the small-time pickpockets and thieves to turn at the great thieves instead. He was pointing to a huge warehouses containing bulks of rice, milk, and grocery products. The cartoon also illustrated the conditions of poor Filipinos in the Philippines. From the looks of it, nothing much has changed. For example, a cartoon depicted how police authorities oppress petty Filipino criminals while turning a blind eye on hoarders who monopolize goods in their huge warehouses. The third cartoon is a commentary on the unprecedented cases of colorum automobiles in the city streets. The Philippine Free Press published this commentary when fatal accidents involving colorum vehicles and taxis occurred too often already. Automobiles became a popular mode of transportation in the city and led to the emergence of taxis. However, the laws and policies implementation was mediocre. This resulted in the increasing colorum and unlicensed vehicles transporting people around the city. The rules governing the insurance of driver's license was loose and traffic police could not be bothered by rampant violations of traffic rules. This is a direct consequence of the drastic urbanization in the Philippine society. The fourth cartoon depicts a cinema. A blown-up police officer was at the screen saying that couples are not allowed to neck and make love in the theater. Two youngsters looked horrified while an older couple seemed amused. McCoy called it the sexual revolution that occurred in the 1930s. Young people as early as that period disturbed the conservative Filipino mindset by engaging in daring sexual activities in public spaces like cinema. Here, we can see how that period was the meeting point between the conservative past and the liberated future of the Philippines.
Of the American era. Historical background written by Alfred McCoy and Alfredo Rosas. American period in the Philippines provided leeway in the publication of the independent newspapers but in strict manner. The censorship loosened when civil government established on 1901. Many Filipino artists made use of cartoons as political commentaries to expose the ills of the American colonial government. McCoy provided analysis of the issues during American period through cartoons, and Rosas compiled these cartoons on a book.
Analysis of the political caricature during the American period. The transition from the Spanish colonial period to the American occupation period saw numerous changes and shifts in culture, society, and politics. The Americans dramatically introduced democracy to the feudal nation, and the result were far from ideal. Aside from this, it was also during the American period that Filipinos were introduced to different manifestations of modernity like healthcare, modern transportation, and media. This ushered in a more open and freer press. The post-independence and the post-Filipino-American period in the Philippines were experienced differently by Filipinos coming from different classes. The upper Principalia class experienced economic prosperity with the opening up of the Philippine economy to the United States, but the majority of the poor Filipino remained poor, desperate, and victims of the state repression. The selected cartoons illustrate not only the opinion of certain media outfits about the Philippine society during the American period, but also paint a broad image of society and politics under the United States. In the arena of politics, for example, we see the price that Filipinos paid for the democracy modeled after the American. At first, it appeared that Filipino politicians at that time did not fully comprehend the essence of democracy and the accompanying democratic institution and processes. This can be seen in the rising dynastic politics in Tondo as depicted in the cartoon published by patronage also grew in power and influence, not only between clients and patrons, but also between the newly formed political parties composed of the elite and the United States. This was depicted in the cartoons where the United States represented by Uncle Sam provided dolly ads for the members of the Federalista while the Nationalista politician look on and wait for their turn. Thus, the essence of competing political parties to enforce choices among the voters was cancelled out. The problem continues up to the present where the politician transfer from one party to another depending on which party was powerful in a specific period of time. The transition from a Catholic-centered Spanish-Filipino society to an Imperial American assimilated one and its complications were also depicted in the cartoons. One example is the unprecedented increase of motorized vehicles in the city. Automobiles become a popular mode of transportation in the city and led to the emergence of taxi. However, the law and the policy implementation was mediocre. This resulted in the increasing colorum and unlicensed vehicle transporting people around the city. The rules governing The issuance of driver's license was loose and traffic police could not be bothered by rampant violation of traffic rules. This is a direct consequences of the drastic urbanization of the Philippine society. Another example is what McCloy called the sexual revolution that occurred in 1930s. Young people as early as the period disturbed the conservative Filipino mindset by engaging in daring sexual activities in public space like cinemas. Here we can see how that period was the meeting point between the conservative past and the liberated future of the Philippines. Lastly, the cartoons also illustrated the condition of poor Filipinos in the Philippines, now governed by the United States. From the looks of it, nothing much has changed. For example, a cartoon depicted how police authorities oppress petty Filipino criminals while turning a blind eye on boarders who monopolize goods in their huge warehouse. The other cartoons depicted how Americans controlled Filipinos through seemingly harmless American objects, controlling their consciousness and mentality. Americans got to control and subjugate Filipinos. Analysis of the political caricature during the American period. The transition from the Spanish colonial period to the American occupation period saw numerous changes and shifts in culture, society, and politics. The Americans dramatically introduced democracy to the fiddling nation, and the results were far from ideal. Apart from that, it was during the American period that Filipinos were exposed to various manifestations of modernity such as healthcare, modern transportation, and media. This marked the beginning of more open and free press. The post-independence and post-Filipino-American periods in the Philippines were experienced differently by the Filipinos from various socioeconomic classes.